Welcome back to another episode of Daily Current Affairs. My name is Aishwarya and I am representing Gallant IAS. So let's move on to yesterday's mains practice question first. So I have given you the topic of examining the scope of fundamental rights in the light of the latest Supreme Court judgment to right of privacy. So in the introduction you should actually mention the judgment, that is the Puttaswamy judgment, in which the Supreme Court said that right to privacy is a fundamental right under Article 21. Okay, now what all can you mention in the right to privacy? Like you can mention some of the subcategories, like in Aadhaar there is right to privacy because you have to give your information and stuff to the government and it can be easily misused as well. So there is a breach of the data privacy that is also included in the right to privacy, which I have already told you in the last session. Then the case of euthanasia, where you need the consent from the patient, it's also a case where there is a case of right to privacy or right to the consent in it. Health records which are available publicly can also be violated or breached under the right to privacy. Security and privacy, Article 377, homosexuality, the marriage and their kind of marriage and stuff can also be mentioned under examples of this. Reproductive rights of women, legal abortions or not, and such could also be mentioned, and write a proper conclusion. So these are some of the criteria in which the fundamental rights could interpret our right to privacy. And not just in one sense but in multiple senses we can actually interpret this right to privacy. Now moving on to today's topics. Now have quite a few topics of yesterday's and tomorrow. We have we have to firstly discuss about the Manipur issue, India-Sri Lanka relations, our artificial intelligence pros and cons. Then Zero Hunger, it's a very important articles in today's newspaper. Invasive weed, Telemanas, captivity bred vultures, a critically endangered bird species in India, INS Kirkan. So these are the 8 topics. Now let's start with the Manipur issue. From yesterday's and today's newspaper there are like lot of articles, more than 10 articles which actually represent the Manipur issue. So within this category there are 3 to 4 things which we need to attend. What is the Manipur history between Meiteis and Kukis before the integration in India, after the integration, what is the present stances we need to know. Recent cause of turmoil between these groups and what's happening in Manipur in real. And also there was a case of internet ban in Manipur. Like what is Supreme Court saying that via Anuradha Basin case. That was an important article in yesterday's news. Also there was issues or telling of the president's rule in Mizoram, Manipur. You already know what the president's rule is, Article 3 article in there. And also it will be the chief minister would also be removed from his post. There are also many more cases of sexual assault on women and what the National Commission for Women's Response and other, it has already become a very big international news and national news in India. Now first we have to deal with the Manipur history. Now you see here, this is the entire Manipur and this is the Impal region which is mainly dominated by the Meitei community. This is actually a valley and this surrounding area, these areas are hills and this is a valley region, thus making it more like a football stadium or cricket stadium in general. All this, like in the middle area, the valley area is actually dominated by the Meitei group. Another hill area is dominated by the Kuki tribe or the Nagas of that area. Now you see here, the valley region is actually more like a football stadium and the Meiteis, this is actually just 10% of the landmass, okay. But 64% of the Meiteis population live here and they are the most dominant, so that they get like 40 out of 60 MLA seats. Now you see, the rest 90% of the areas that covers the hilly and geographical areas are covered by the tribals like the Kukis and Nagas. They are just 35% of the population, but still even with this much of land area and all, they just get 20 MLA seats. And also these Meiteis are most dominantly Hindus and Muslim community, whereas these tribals like Kukis and Nagas are mostly Christians. So there are conflicts related to that as well. Now moving on, why the issue here is like the Meitei wants tribal status, scheduled tribal status. That is what the main issue in this is. Like before Meiteis being integrated into India, Like in 1970s, the Meitei groups was integrated into India. Before that, they were actually a tribal group in that place. But after the integration, they are now non-tribals, and the Kukis and Nagas are only the tribal groups. So there is a lot of advantage that is there for Kukis and Nagas compared to Meiteis when they have the tribal status. Now you see, they were given a constitutional status, which means that the Meiteis cannot buy the hilly areas or areas that is covering the tribal areas of Kukis and Nagas. But the Kukis and Nagas can actually buy or purchase land of the Meiteis, which is a non-tribal group. Thus, there is actually called a shrinking Impal Valley, and they want a constitutional safeguard against the outsiders, the tribal people who are trying to buy their Meitei lands. Also, the population of Meiteis has been gradually declining. It was about 59% in the 1951 census, but it has gradually declined to about 44% as per the 2011 census. Now they are actually becoming marginalized in their own dominant area, and they are losing all their ancestral lands. And this has actually fueled a lot of Meitei nationalism as well. From 2012, they started demanding for scheduled tribe status, and in 2006 to 12 they demanded for inner line permit to avoid the entry of other foreigners or other tribals in here as well. Now there is an issue with this. You see here, this bordering is Myanmar. So there are many other communities from Myanmar like Zomi, Chin, like tribal groups migrating to these hilly areas, thus increasing the population in these areas, and there is also a basic demographic differences in this area as well. Now because of this, there has been increase in population in this in the tribal areas, because many people come from Myanmar because we know there is Myanmar coup, and many refugees or people migrate to Manipur through their porous borders. Now also there is an issue of like that majority, like about 35% of the tribal groups, they employ under the government. Okay, they get employment under the government. They get employment under the government, which means that the government is the largest employer, and they give majority reservation for the Kukis and Nagas under the tribal quota, which is actually unfair for Meitei community. Now, why are the tribals, that is the Kukis and the Nagas, against giving Meiteis scheduled tribe status? Now you see, Meiteis have a demographic advantage. They have a demographic advantage, means that they are low-lying area, they are in the valleys. They have a political advantage also, because they are dominant in these regions, and they have a political advantage as well, and they are academically and educationally advanced than any of the tribal groups in the hilly areas. Okay. Now, when we give a SC status to Meiteis, it will lead to loss of their jobs. I have already told you that Manipur, many of the majorities ST groups from Manipur get job in the government quotas. Now when Meitei groups come into that, there is a less reduction in vacancies and less chances of the other tribal groups getting job in here. Now the Meiteis can, in this case the Meiteis can also, if given scheduled tribe status, the Meiteis can also purchase the Kukis and Nagas land from the hilly area as well. Now before this, like if not given status, which means I have already told you that the Kukis and the Nagas can purchase right from the Meitei area, but the reverse was not possible. But if the Meiteis are given the scheduled tribe status, the reverse is possible, and the Kukis and Nagas may even lose their tribal lands. Now Meiteis, I told you already, they were dominant. Even their language is given in the 8th schedule. The Meiteis being non-tribals, they have other benefits associated, like they were given the SC status, OBC status, EWS status as well. Okay. Also the 90% of area in the tribals, but bulk of the budget and the development actually goes to the Meiteis group as well. Now this is an important key point, because the Meiteis and the Nagas, they get a very amount of low budget for their development, but majority goes to the Meitei area. These are some of the reasons why the tribal groups don't want Meiteis to get the scheduled tribe status. Now, the recent issue is that the Manipur High Court has actually asked the government to give the Meiteis the scheduled tribe status, which has actually started a series of protests and other violence. Also, there was eviction of a Kuki resident from this area, that is Churchanpur Kopam, that is a protected forest area, and they were actually residing in an illegal settlement. But they stated that it was a violation of Article 371C, that is for their tribal welfare in Manipur region. Now, that is some of the reasons which have actually started fueling again crisis and protest in Manipur region. Now, another important thing which we need to know is the internet ban. Was it helpful or not in the case of Manipur? I have already discussed internet ban earlier, with which we are bringing in Supreme Court regulations of partial ban apps and all. Now, this is exclusively related to Manipur area. Now, earlier Supreme Court has given a judgment called Anuradha Basin case, where the Supreme Court has ruled that undefined restriction of internet service would be illegal. Okay, now between 2019 to 2022, there were more than 9 states where internet bans were enforced, like due to mainly small issue, mainly in regions like Kashmir, Maharashtra, Punjab, and so on. So, the Supreme Court stated that undefined restriction of internet would be illegal. It should be according to necessity and proportionality of the issues that is happening there. Whatever the issue is happening, if it's minor issue, there would be no need for internet ban. With the series of cases or the series of intensity increasing, they can ban accordingly. So, what are the pros? By this way, the rights of the people would be protected. They might get access to health and education, banking and so on, and we would know the issue correctly. Now, you see, there was cases of sexual assault which happened in May, and there was internet ban at that time, so none of the India or other people knew about that case. Now, resurfacing the internet again, we are actually getting to know what was happening in Manipur. This could actually be avoided if there was internet at that place, at that time. But there are such cons as well. It would lead to the spread of fake messages, and it could create more national security issues, threatening the integrity and sovereignty of India. So, internet ban should be taken necessarily and as per the proportionality as well. They could actually restrict to other measures like partial ban apps, which like messaging apps like Messenger, Telegram, etc. are only banned. The other internet could be given, so it doesn't restrict the health, education and banking sector of that place as well. Now, let's move on to the next topic, that is the India-Sri Lanka relations. Now, in this, it's a very important topic in our GS2 that talks about the bilateral relations between India and Sri Lanka. We know India and Sri Lanka has a lot of cultural ties, historic ties, so it's important to know what is the background of this issue. So, I will be taking the background a little bit less because I don't have that kind of that much time to take here. So, I will be just going on through detailed and minute issues fast. Now, so the recent issue is that Sri Lankan president offered to implement the 13th amendment. You should know the 13th amendment, but this 13th amendment was rejected by the Tamil National Alliance. So, we should first know what is 13th amendment and why the Tamil National Alliance actually rejected it. The 13th amendment is actually Indo-Lankan Peace Accord that was signed in 1987, mediated by our Indian Prime Minister, then President Rajiv Gandhi, and between Sri Lankan President and LTT, that is the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Nadu. Now, the 13th amendment is actually a set of policies that ensure the Tamilian rights as well. It talks about creation of 9 provincial councils and making Tamil also an official language in Sri Lanka, and 9 other provinces which we created, giving Tamils equal rights even in Sinhalese Buddhist majority areas. So, that is what is dealt in the 13th amendment. But this, as the Sri Lankan president stated offering or implementing the 13th amendment, they state that police powers will be exempted from this. Now, this was not liked by the TNA and stated it has a hollow promise, and it would also lead to lack of political will to genuinely develop power between the Tamil and Sinhalese Buddhists in those areas. That is why the TNA has actually rejected the implementation of the 13th amendment, or else if it's fully implemented, it would be very beneficial for the Tamils as well as their rights. Now, we should know some ties that is between India and Sri Lanka. We have historical ties, we have a long history of religion, spreading of Buddhism, and there was cultural ties also. It marks 200 years of Indians migrating to Tamil areas, that is in Jaffna Peninsula region, which is mainly main areas of Indian Tamil which migrated 200 years ago. There are also many economic ties with India. India is Sri Lanka's third largest exporter. Okay, third largest exporter and destination. Sri Lanka has a free trade agreement, and it's also India is a majority investor, FDI of about 1.7 billion was invested in Sri Lanka. Also we have defense joint military like Mitra Shakti and naval exercise like Slinex to ensure the coordination or defense coordination as well. India and Sri Lanka are also members of the regional groupings like BIMSTEC and SAARC, and India sees Sri Lanka as a part of its neighborhood first policy and also Sagar doctrine, security and growth for all in the Indian Ocean region. So Sri Lanka is also included in India's two initiatives of neighborhood first policy and Sagar doctrine. But Sri Lanka has some of the issues, like there are fishing and fishermen issues, where Indian fishermen were killed, and a lot of fishermen gets arrested because they cross the boundary area set by like exclusive economic zones that is stressed by Sri Lanka and India. And also there is a heavy influence of China in Sri Lanka. You see here the Colombo port, Matla airport, Hambantota port, these are all developed by the Chinese, like these are Chinese built. And in India, like influence in areas like Jaffna Peninsula, we also have like Kanke Santurai railway, Palai air base, Talai Mannar, and some of the areas like in Jaffna Peninsula where India has a lot of interest. So there is actually conflicting relations of China and India in this Sri Lankan area where we are arguing for more rights and development and all. Now the recent corporations taken like maritime connectivity, we are going to develop ports and logistics at Colombo, Trincomalee, like Colombo, Trincomalee and Kanke Sandapuri railway and port, and also resumption of passage of ferry service which is between Nagapattinam and Kanke Santurai of Sri Lanka, and also air connectivity from Chennai to Trincomalee, Bettikal and etc. from Sri Lanka. Energy and power, high capacity power grid interconnections, and also there is electricity between Sri Lanka and BBIN countries are shared with BBN countries like Bangladesh, Bhutan, India and Nepal. Also solar power projects at Sampur and LNG infrastructure. Also we are coordinating issues of green hydrogen and green ammonia infrastructure. So these are some of the recent developments and cooperations between India and Sri Lanka. Now moving on to next, that is, it's an important topic, artificial intelligence, unlimited potential. Now in this we will be talking about some of the potentials of artificial intelligence. Okay, see here, AI will help in democratizing knowledge, cutting edge science and so on. In this, a major issue that is told is the protein folding problem. Now with recent human developments and human science, it is impossible or like it's difficult for us to like predict the patterns of protein development. There are like many, these proteins are made up of amino acids. There are a lot of formulations how these proteins can be folded and all. With each type of folding there are some kind of rare genetic diseases, actually rare diseases, or there are some of the neglected diseases that is associated with which, because of which we cannot find any drugs or cure for that kind of diseases and such, and they go neglected. But with artificial intelligence they were able to actually identify about 100 of such proteins, and it kind of potentially solved the protein folding problem. Protein folding problem. This was actually solved by AI's DeepMind AlphaFold. This actually solved the protein folding problem in India, not in India, in the world. Okay. Now, because of this identifying a lot of proteins folding problem, we can actually create drugs according to it. Now, many of the diseases won't go neglected, and we can actually potentially create drugs for these rare diseases, and we can cure diseases much faster. Now this is one of the development of AI. This was actually this DeepMind AlphaFold actually solved this protein folding problem in about 2020. Okay, now there are other discoveries as well, like in 2020 a robotic synthesizer actually read a report and created a chemical formula. Now this robotic synthesizer is actually chemical based. It actually read the report of chemistry. Okay, now it created without any human interference by itself the compound that was a chemical compound that was actually described in that paper. Now you see how the development happens in the case of artificial intelligence even without human interference. That robotic synthesizer was able to create a chemical compound by itself just by reading its research paper. Now UNEP's World Environment Situation Room also uses AI, artificial intelligence, to analyze real-time sensor data from about 140 countries to actually analyze sea level rising, the temperatures, how would affect the melting of glaciers, and how it affect the climate of the world, and etc. could be analyzed by artificial intelligence. The units that is actually present in about 140 countries. Now, but these are some of the major developments happen in the field of AI and how it could actually potentially help human beings. But there are also many cases of how this is a con to our humans. Like, what are the risks associated with AI? Reduce the authenticity of work. Now you see here, reduce on, like if I am a writer, I create a work. Okay, now the ChatGPT also now can create a work, can create fictions, can create a novel or any poem, etc. So it actually reduces the authenticity of work. There is no correct imagination or the proper ideas that is established by a human being, but these are works of an artificial intelligence. Okay, now they will be creating a kind of divide of have and have not. I'll be using artificial intelligence to create a lot of stuffs and groups and products and stuffs which would actually be beneficial for others, while the other set of group doesn't have an artificial intelligence also create the work, but their efficiency is decreased because of AI, thus creating AI divide. Now this AI divide is even more greater than the digital divide. Also reduces the efficiency at the workplace. If somebody is using AI and the other is using not, the efficiency of this is also reduced. Also there are security threats like deepfakes. Now you can edit the imaging, like you can edit my face to the face of somebody else and it will be more real like that person is talking and not me. So you can create like images and videos, creating deepfakes. Like it is a major security threat happening with the use of AI. Now moving on, what has to be done to get to zero hunger? Now this is a main important topic which come to in GS2, and hunger is our SDG goals number 2, to reach zero hunger. Now this to end hunger, achieve food security, improve the nutrition and also promote sustainable agriculture. Now this SDG goal has to be attained by 2030. It was started in 2015 and it has been achieved by 2030. Now what are the most takeaways from this article? Global report on the food crisis 2030. Now this report was recently released by the Food Security Information Network and the Global Network Against Food Crisis. Okay, it is expected that people experience experience of acute food insecurity, which means that people are getting limited amount of nutritional foods and some are even going hungry. So there has been increase in acute food insecurity. There are some of the reasons why this is happening right now, because there has been an economic shock due to COVID, extreme weather condition and Ukraine war. So these three kind of coming all together now created a lot of economic shocks, and thus there was an increase in acute food insecurity. Also, it was estimated that these many people, like 691,783 million people of India, suffer from hunger in 2022. Almost 600 million people will be undernourished by 2030. Now we see, we discussed that SDG goal 2, that is zero hunger, has been achieved by 2030. But with 600 million people again going undernourished, means that we are not going to achieve this goal by 2030. But the report also mentions that there is some improvement in progress in stunting wasting and undernourished. Stunting is that under the 5 years of age, height is very less compared to the average height that this age requires. Wasting is that stunting is related to height and wasting is related to weight. That for the required age, no required weight is there for the child. So there was actually improvement in the stunting and wasting, and also there was improvement in undernourishment or decrease in malnutrition. But the revised analysis said that about 3.2 billion of people could not afford healthy diet in 2020. This was also some of the key facts that is mentioned in this report. Now, if it's ever asked about food insecurity or other kind of zero hunger in our GS paper means, it's important that you actually mention this report and some of the key provisions or facts that is actually mentioned in this report. It would actually boost your answer. Now, as per the article, it mentions what is food insecurity defines. The food insecurity as defined by the World Food Summit in 1996 is that when all the people at all the times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe and nutritious food that meets the dietary needs, and food prevalence of moderate or severe food insecurity in the population. So, this is what defined by the World Food Summit 1996. Now, this is measured by food insecurity experience scale. These are some of set of questionnaires where they ask the people if they are getting the required nutrition, food or the necessary goods that is available. This is now this food insecurity is actually measured by the food insecurity experience scale. Now, so these are some of the solutions that the author has mentioned in the article. Now, identify the vulnerable population groups, making informed group decision makings and appropriate targeting of beneficiaries so that they could identify the vulnerable population and provide them with the food required. Support healthier food outlets like including nutritious foods like millets and other vegetables, oil in the diet provided to them. Also nutritional safety and quality of the street foods, quality of the other foods like food where we get food cheap, and there is quality in that and they don't get food poisoning and all. Also the GRFC which we talked about, GRFC, building rural infrastructure so that the people get the quality rural and feeder roads, and it would actually boost the hunger, like it will give them employment opportunity, they will have income, then the poverty will be reduced, then the hunger will be reduced. So, this vicious cycle will be over. And also public investments like warehouse and cold storage where we can actually store the food grains in surplus, in time of surplus, and then use in place where there is shortage. So, these warehouse cold storage can be used to ensure our food security. Moving on, we have some smaller 4 to 5 topics. Let's discuss that very quickly. Now, Ludwigia peruvia is actually an alien species. Alien species means that it is a non-native species. This species is actually not found typically in our Indian continent, but it comes from another continent or countries via via the transport of goods and such, or they might be brought into India deliberately. Like this flower, this is a very cute looking flower and this is actually used as an ornamental plant. So, the people bring it from other countries to India. Now, this is actually thriving in the native population and causing problem and replacing our grass and other plants, thus affecting the feeder population of elephants and other animals. Now, this is actually alien species that is actually come from Central America and Central America as such. It actually poses a biosafety threat and it actually taken over the whole place of the Western Ghats and actually reduce the population of grass and other plants affecting our animals as such. So, that is what is mentioned in this news. You might get a question in prelims like this, giving us this invasive species and what it affects and where it comes from could also be asked. Now, Telemanas, this was actually a recent initiative posed in our union budget 2020-23. This is Telemanas is tele mental health program. This is to counter anxiety and mental health depression which occurred during the COVID time. So, this was started last year after COVID. Now, this is to ensure that the people, like it's telecalling, when you call them, they will actually help us get over anxiety and depression if we are going through it at that time. So, that is this article. It's a very small article. Now, captivity bred vultures take wings in the forest expanses. Forest expanses, okay. Now, about 8 oriental white-backed vultures, that is what shown in the picture, has been released from the wild Jatayu Conservation Breeding Center, which was in Haryana. Now, why are these vultures bred in centers? Why are they not free in the wild? So, you see that by 1993, there was 40 million of vultures that was there in India. Like they was flying freely and everything, and no, like vultures was not bred in captivity. Okay, they was flying freely. About 40 million vultures existed then, as per the Bombay National History Society. Now, with the introduction, but at times, the population of 3 major categories of vultures like the oriented white-backed vulture, long-billed vultures and slender-billed vultures declined by about 97% to 99% of the population. Now, it required that these population of vultures is decreasing, and for their safety, it is important that they be captivated in captivity centers. So, why was the population of vultures decreasing so fast? We used to actually use a toxic agent called diclofenac, an anti-inflammatory drug which was used in cattle and human beings as well. But when the problem was that when the cow dies, cattle dies, the vultures actually feed on the carcass of these cattle and such. So, with that the toxin diclofenac gets in the body of the vultures and they die. That is how majority of vultures population die. Now, see here, this is the oriental white-necked vulture. This is the long-billed and this is slender-billed vulture population. Now, the IUCN has protected them as critically endangered animals, and in India we have actually protected the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. We have placed the vultures, these 3 category of vultures under Schedule 1. Now, there are 4 such Jatayu conservation centers in India, like in Haryana, Madhya Pradesh, West Bengal and Assam. Now, these are protected by the BNHS and Royal Society for Protection on Birds. So, these birds has been growing, the large population of these vultures has been growing in these captivity centers in Haryana, and 8 of them has been released into the wild now. Also, now this toxic agent diclofenac has been banned from use in India. Now, this is our last topic. INS Kirpan, like we have been using in Indian Navy, INS Kirpan, which is a Corvette, has been decommissioned in India after the 32 years of its use, and we are giving it as a gift to our Vietnam friend. So, in this context, you should know India-Vietnam relationships as well. Okay, it was the first ever occasion of India offering a fully functional Corvette to a very friendly nation. So, this is the very first instance of India doing that. So, it is a major initiative. Okay, that is in the news today. Now, let us discuss some questions. Elephant pass, sometimes seen in the news, is mentioned in the context of affairs of which one of the following? Elephant pass, which we recently discussed today, is Sri Lanka. So, the elephant pass comes in Sri Lanka. This is also some mains question regarding India-Sri Lanka issues. In respect of India-Sri Lanka relation, discuss how domestic factors influence foreign policy. Next question, India is age-old friend of Sri Lanka. Discuss India's role in the recent crisis in Sri Lanka in the light of President's statement. You have to discuss about the domestic relations, domestic policy, and also the crisis, how India helped Sri Lanka, like we have been giving favors of like $1 billion of line of credit and so on. So, actually go through both these main topic and we will be discussing in detail in next class. Now, this is all for today. Please work out these questions and we will be discussing it first thing tomorrow. You will get a telegram, you will get this PDF in our telegram channel, Gallant IAS Pathashala. Stay tuned for more. Thank you.